Hi, and thanks for joining our webinar today. Today, we're going to be talking about what we're seeing as some emerging trends in the retail sector and what you, as an e-commerce business or a retail business, may want to be starting to consider as you may be trying to make this transition into e-commerce. Now, this is in response to a number of wide-ranging limitations and changes that we're seeing for retailers everywhere and what we've all had to make, from social distancing and limitation to moving to digital delivery, adapting to staff working from home, or in real extreme cases, the decision to pause trading or close. But we often wrap this up in terms of business continuity, but what does that actually mean for you as a retailer? So it's a really broad term, and it could be something like the local florist converting to an online shop or digital delivery, or moving a shop fully online for the first time. We'll talk about some of those broader topics and themes that we've seen so you can choose how to apply them to your business. But more than anything for today, what we're going to be talking about is what it takes to move that shop front online. We'll keep this webinar fairly short and quite fluid today. The businesses that we've been talking to lately are telling us that that their communication methods are changing, but they also don't seem to have a lot of time. So imagine this is going to take about the length of a coffee break. We will be taking Q&A during this webinar today. So if you do have questions, please, by all means, flick them into the side panel of the GoToWebinar panel, and we can help you out when we finish off the panel discussion today. So let's get on into it. I'm Rachel, and I work as part of MessageMedia's marketing team. And today with me, I've got my colleague, Damien Brennan, who is one of our e-commerce specialists. We also have with us today Ben De Jong, who is from The Cut, who is a digital agency, an e-commerce specialist agency from over in Perth. So, Damien, I might actually get you to introduce yourself.
Yeah, my name's Damien. I'm one of the e-com specialists here at MessageMedia. Just so everyone's aware, MessageMedia has been around for almost 20 years now. We'll have our 20th year celebration this year, and actually pioneered two-way messaging in Australia. We work in a wide range of industries, from healthcare through to banks, but e-com and retail is definitely something we are quite strong in, and definitely a focus for us over the next period.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And Ben, can I get you to talk to me a little bit about The Cut?
Yeah, absolutely. Good morning, Rachel, Damien. Thanks for having me on board, and good morning to everyone who's listening in now and maybe later if this is recorded. So I'm a director at The Cut. We specialise in e-com and using the Shopify platform. We've been working with Shopify since 2010, so quite a long time. We help businesses set up, design and deploy new Shopify e-commerce websites. We help businesses improve existing ones. And we do a lot of work around branding and customer engagement in the e-com space as well.
Wonderful. Thanks very much.
Pleasure.
So what we normally talk to when we're talking about e-commerce is that we talk about the fact that retail has come such a long way over the course of time. And we usually talk about it being the traditional thing, the movement into direct marketing, and then the birth of e-commerce. But then over the last couple of months, we all know what kind of happened, and it's just fundamentally changed the way we all tend to have to think about it. If you weren't already thinking about e-commerce, you're kind of there now. So that's the point of what we're going to be chatting about today: what it takes to do it, how you get to do it, how you make it successful for yourself, and in an ideal world, how do you come out of this even stronger and more successful going into the future? So let's kick it off. Oh, I'm sorry to show that on screen. Let's kick it off into Ben. What are you seeing from e-commerce businesses or even traditional retail businesses at the moment?
Yeah, I mean, this is a great way to kick it off. I've been doing a lot of interviews for our own podcast and talking to people from New York to San Francisco to even in the Middle East and the UK and also here in Perth. I think what seems to be common, and certainly for our experience, is a range of different scenarios for all sorts of different e-commerce businesses, but definitely plenty of positive stories. I mean, as you've alluded to in your question, there are definitely some people that have been hit hard. Obviously, that's in the food and hospitality sector, also bricks and mortar retailers who aren't set up to sell online, and quite often in the luxury categories as well. Then there's some who are having little or no effect. They might be in professional services, maybe the resources sector or trade products. And then there are those that are booming off the back of COVID. Some more interesting out of the park ones, I guess, might be climbing frames. We've seen a massive growth with one of our clients in that sector. Selling seeds to grow vegetables online. We've had a client who just went through the roof on that. Wine, definitely. And then there are some that are pivoting and kind of using COVID to springboard and get their e-commerce ramped up.
Fantastic. And what are you hearing from traditional retailers, both Damien and Ben? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I think pretty similar to what Ben was just talking about. We've seen that they've had to pivot and pivot quite quickly. And you know, there's a number of examples, but one that really springs to mind for me is one of my local stores actually. As a local brewery, they basically pivoted within 2 days of lockdown from being a store and a venue to then doing online deliveries through the Shopify platform. But then also changed, I guess, their business model to also do like a drive-through bottle shop where you pre-order. And I think that's kind of one great example. I think also if you walk through kind of your local shopping centre or mall, you'll see the amount of like bricks and mortar stores and definitely the large brands that have been forced to close down or change their shopping hours. And one thing, I mean, definitely being in the communication space that's come out of that is that those retailers are now having to communicate to their customers more often and about more topics rather than just sales. And that's one of the really key things I've found out of the space. Unsure about what you've heard, Ben.
Yeah, I think definitely we're going to be like hearing and experiencing some of the same things. I mean, as I said earlier, the hardest hit businesses are hospitality, definitely retailers. We have a couple who are in this situation, just had their store traffic obviously completely dry up. And as you say, they really had to scramble to activate their communication digitally to their customers and sort of say, look, you know, we're still here for you. We're here with our products for you. You can access them online. And it really pushed that whole focus on e-com, on communicating to customers. Of course, you don't want to be going out with discounts and slash and burn strategies. But yeah, I mean, I think definitely a lot of people are feeling pain for sure. And we shouldn't lose sight of that it's been incredibly hard for a lot of people. We've seen some retailers who were focused more on bricks and mortar start to turn it around and start to increase their sales online. And I think that'll be something they see as an advantage moving forward once business returns to normal. It's really interesting you talk about a brewery. We have an awesome local brewery here called Other Side, and they distribute nationally. And they within 2 or 3 weeks created a whole new beer range based around, you know, easy drinking at home, and it was at a pretty accessible price point as well. And that was obviously to drive their home delivery. So that's a kind of a cute and really well executed example of pivoting. And then, yeah, the other thing is people are springboarding, like they might not be in desperate trouble, but they're going, wow, this has made me realise that e-com and getting my digital sorted out is very important now, but it's going to be even more important over the next 5, 10, 20 years.
Which is a really interesting next sort of step into the next question that I was going to ask you. When a traditional bricks and mortar store is coming to you, particularly you, Ben, what are you got? What's your guidance to them? What are you suggesting that they think about? What are the considerations? What are the strategies they need to put in place?
Yeah, I mean, I think we very much take a case-by-case approach, and it really does depend on what situation they're in, how well they were set up or not set up, you know, what sort of customer database they have to sort of activate some digital marketing or their social media communities. But I think, you know, the general things would be to encourage them to communicate as much as effectively as possible as they can with their existing customers. You know, let people know what's happening in their business, let people know what they do and don't have available. You know, reach out to them. Don't sort of go quiet and close the doors and sit under the bed with your hands over your head. You've got to be out there communicating to people and being transparent about your situation. And if you're running into challenges, you know, please bear with us. We're experiencing this and that, but we can still give you A, B, and C. I mean, I think that conversation or that communication point is one of the first things that a lot of businesses can or were able to activate pretty quickly. And after that, it might be more around broader strategies or messaging on the website, or making design changes, or just making, you know, interface improvements so that the shopping experience, if they're experiencing an increase in traffic but aren't able to convert it, for example, it might be around those sort of redesign and tweaking things around customer conversion.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right, Ben. I guess one thing I've really noticed in speaking to retailers is that retail has changed for the long term from this. I mean, I think there's, you know, a whole market that previously hadn't used retail, and I instantly think of like my mum and dad, for example. They typically hadn't used online stores. They hadn't used e-com. They were always going to your bricks and mortar store and purchase in there. Through this period, they've been forced, I guess, to start to use some of these things. And really, they're the ones that are now finding how convenient, how easy it is to purchase online, and, you know, a couple of days later, your items to turn up at your front door. So I guess my biggest advice, and that I've been speaking to retailers about, is make sure what you're doing now can continue on for the next for the long term, really. So whatever strategies you've implemented over the last couple of months and you know, during this lockdown period, make sure those strategies can continue post lockdown, because I think people will come to expect what we have been delivering.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, we're all very, very lucky because we're in that space that's been massively accelerated by COVID. You know, what has e-commerce as a sector experienced sort of 2 years of growth and evolution in 3 or 4 months? I'd say that's probably not an unreasonable estimation. And as you say, all those new online shoppers, a lot of them are going to stay as online shoppers. And the people who were shopping online before have probably been buying products in different categories that they hadn't purchased before. And a lot of that will remain after COVID, for sure.
Which is an interesting one. So beyond just opening up a whole new demographic that previously we wouldn't have actually anticipated we would ever going to be able to move out of a traditional bricks and mortar store, let alone use a credit card over cash. What other really interesting trends have we been seeing in e-commerce? Which is another way for me to say, if some of the listeners on the line wanted to, go on to a couple of these emerging trends, what are the ones they should be thinking about?
Yeah, I think
there are some really funny ones. I heard about this sort of micro boom in a sector where it's DIY haircuts, and you can, which is completely irrelevant for me, but for someone like Damien with a full head of hair, you can buy a haircut consultation from a professional hairdresser, and he'll take you through how to cut your own hair while you're at home via a video conference. And that was apparently inspired by a very funny story I heard, where a legal team were meeting with a judge in America, I believe, and one of the lawyers called into the video conference from his bed in his pajamas. So it was this whole thing about, you know, people are kind of losing the plot a little bit in terms of professional presentation, haircuts, hairbrushing, shaving, all those sorts of things. So, I mean, there are some really funny trends that are emerging. As well as the more serious ones, of course. But there's a lot of things going out there that you think, yeah, wow, who would have thought that?
Yeah, it's actually that's a really interesting way for what you'd only ever assume to be a very traditional physical point of presence store pivoting in a really unique way. That's brilliant. Damien, what have you been?
There are so many of them, aren't there? It's really funny and also really amazing and inspiring a lot of times. Sorry, Damien, you go ahead.
No, that's all right. I was going to say, I mean, there's, as you said, there's definitely examples of that, and I've actually next Friday night got a virtual beer tasting booked in online, which is, I guess, a similar situation where it's a Zoom meeting with a consultant. But one that I'm finding is that retailers and businesses in general are actually becoming more human. I think we've always had quite high expectations of communications within businesses, and that items were, if somebody says it's going to be delivered at today, then you expect that item to be delivered today. Similar, if you're on Uber Eats or Menulog and you sit there and you go, oh, it says it's going to be delivered at 8:47, and if it's not there at 8:47, you were always questioning what was going on. Whereas I think now people have, because of that more open communication about stock being affected, or deliveries being affected, people are realizing that behind these businesses there is humans running it. So number one, I think businesses are becoming more human, but also from that, the support we're now giving to our local businesses, and I think of, like, as you said, the cafes, the restaurants, and how people have really rallied behind supporting their local businesses has been fantastic.
That's a really interesting one that someone brought up with a podcast that I was doing yesterday, actually, and they said that it sort of shifted the idea away from it being, well, e-commerce, you're buying internationally and you're not shopping locally. I think the whole COVID thing, with all of these local businesses activating and doing something online and digitally, it's kind of shifted the focus a little bit. Well, I can purchase online from a retailer who's in my suburb or my city or my state or whatever. It doesn't mean I'm taking my business outside of my state or my country.
Correct. And actually, it's one of those ones where people, I think, have always assumed that the minute we move into a really heavy e-commerce world, we're actually going to be quite anonymized, and we actually lose that personal touch. So what you're saying is, like, what are the tech? Actually, I might throw this one to you, Damien. How are really great e-commerce retailers maintaining that personal touch? What does it take?
Yeah, so for me, I always look at it as you've got so many different communication channels that you can be speaking to people through or on. Like you do have SMS, which obviously we're quite strong in. There's email, there's Instagram, Facebook, there's Google Ads, there's what's going through your website, there's online chat, there's phone calls still. There's just a myriad of ways that you can be speaking to them. And one that comes to mind is, I think, something that's fantastic for me to go through as a customer was actually happened earlier this week on Wednesday. A brand advertised they were doing a new line launch through Instagram, starting Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. I woke up a little bit late and was late to it. So one of the key items that I wanted, which was a jumper, was sold out by 8:15. So wow. I went through, purchased a couple of items anyway. And then obviously when I was filling out my shipping details, they captured my email address. At midday, I received an email from them saying, hey, the sale was overwhelming. And what we're actually going to do is we're opening pre-orders for the lines, and we're going to match those discounted rates. So from that, I guess they've spoke to me on a few different channels. So obviously through Instagram, through their website, and through email. They've become more human because they've said, hey, we didn't actually expect this big of a response from our lines. And so for me, it makes me feel like there is good customer service behind it. And the third point is they've been able to save sales because they've opened pre-orders now. And it's something not just for that one retailer, but we see quite a bit of, is when there is an out of stock on your website, people still are still looking at that item. How do you capture their details, or how do you capture their sale once you do have that stock come back in?
Yeah.
Fantastic. And then the final question I actually had for you guys before we hand across to questions of the audience. What's a success story that you personally have observed and just gone, that's the sort of thing that others should be taking advantage of? Ben, I might start with you.
Yeah, sure. I think you know, I think one of the things that's been most surprising with me is the variety of sectors that have experienced something positive out of this. I mean, we've heard lots and lots of success stories first and second hand. I'd say that most of them have been down to people being in a sector already that's happened to had a great experience from the boom. So, I mean, we had someone in the gardening sector who got 900% growth. They did their previous year's revenue in less than 2 weeks when the lockdown started, and you know that some of that growth is definitely still with them. The best one I've heard, a specific story that really impressed me was a US bakery chain. I think they had about 60 physical stores, lots and lots of employees. Every single store had to close. So they pivoted by packaging up all their ingredients to a selection of their most popular products, and people were able to buy those ingredients, obviously with recipes and methods, and bake their favourites from that bakery chain at home. And they were obviously launching how-to videos with that, and that pivot from that business owner, which he did within a few days, you know, basically saved his business, saved hundreds of employees jobs, and you just look at that and you think that is incredible, both the idea and the speed at which they executed that. I love that story.
That is awesome. That is actually really, really cool. Damien, what have you been seeing, or what do you see? What's a success story you've heard?
Yeah, I mean, there is so many of them. I mean, that one I kind of mentioned before is probably one of the best ones I've seen, which was really about communication across a number of channels. But obviously, them having that overwhelming response in terms of the new launch was fantastic. You know, I guess in speaking to others, it has really been about how quickly people have been able to either pivot to online, or how they've been able to make the most of you know, lockdown and what we're going through. I had speaking to one retailer, he mentioned that at the moment people have more time in their house more than ever before, and they're actually engaging on, you know, social media and engaging through websites more so than ever, rather than being outside and, you know, going out and seeing friends and family. So he looked at it as, you know, that's a great way to now push, or what we should be doing is really pushing our digital marketing spend and digital marketing advertising, because it's a great way to capture them now. I think the other piece, and that I'm speaking to a number of retailers about, is how to make the most of people that are already on your website, or have been a customer previously. They already know you, they've already used your brand, they know the quality of the product. So how do you get them back into store? And just the way those retailers are thinking, rather than always going out and attracting new customers, how you make the most of, I guess, your current database and your current customers has been, you know, something that I didn't think they'd be looking at this stage.
Yeah, good call. So look, I am going to just say that we are going to hand over to questions, and please do throw them into the questions panel on the GoToWebinar section. But before, and as we collate a few of the questions that have come through, just to let you know that both The Cut and MessageMedia are here to give you a hand if you, and we're there to stand beside you if you need to look at pivoting your business, however and whatever that might look like. Because we're actually both really fortunate as software businesses that, by the very nature of our service, that is, you know, we provide things in the cloud, and our workforce is focused upon that. We're actually really uniquely set up to help work with you and operate remotely if that's what needs to happen. And a lot of us are already doing so, and we can continue to do so with confidence, so that you've got both access to the right things, the right resources, but more importantly, the right experts that can give you a hand with this. So thanks very much, Ben and Damien. We'll open up to questions. And one question that has come through so far is, have you actually seen an increase in the number of stores opening up over the last little while, Ben?
I think, you know, we have definitely seen an increase in inquiry and requests for help. That's 100% sure. We haven't ourselves had any sort of really rapid deployment of sites from scratch in response to COVID. For us, it's been more about people ramping up, improving what they're already doing. Certainly redesigns, rethemes, those sorts of things. And we have had some requests for urgent kind of panicked type of help around deliveries and handling requests for online deliveries. But yeah, look, I can't say we've actually had to really speedily deploy a whole new website from scratch as a response to the virus.
Right. And Damien, another one that's come through, what are some of the top communication tips that you'd be recommending for some of these e-commerce businesses, particularly in light of that example that you gave?
Yeah, so I think, and happy to, whoever's asked the question, happy to kind of take it up offline as well through LinkedIn or wherever you can find me. But I think for me, it's really getting personal with your messaging, making sure the message you are sending out is actually relevant to the person you're sending it to. You know, I'm a big believer of being led by data. So understanding who your target market is, understanding what that message or what message is going to cut through with them and make sense to them. That's one of my key things. And also make sure it's timely. You know, the example that I spoke about before with the retailer, it was super timely because it was, you know, it was disappointing for me that I wasn't able to buy the jumper that I wanted that morning. You know, to be honest, I actually went up and complained to a couple of friends that, you know, I'd missed out. But then for that to come through it, you know, a couple of hours later, it's like, oh, fantastic, I can jump on that straight away, was perfect. And really understanding your target market and understanding how they use technology. You know, for anybody that's targeting that 18 to, you know, mid 30s, they're on their mobile the whole time. You know, my phone vibrates and I jump on it straight away. So making sure you can get to them where they already are. So if they're on their mobile, get them on their mobile. If they're on the computer, use the computer.
There's a term for that, Damien. It's called nomophobia, the fear of not being with your mobile.
Yeah,
it's a legitimate and then we finally got one. Sorry?
I've definitely got that. So.
And then we've also got one that says, you mentioned marketing to your own customers. What are some different ways that retail stores can do that? Look, I might actually answer that as the marketer on the line. Depends on what access to information you've got. If you are a retail store, your point of presence, your actual store, is one of your best assets that you can have, whether that's actually directing people who are walking past and giving them access to your digital traffic or your digital footprints, whether that's your Instagram, your Facebook, or even say an email address or a dedicated number or website, using that as your primary tool, and from there starting to build up your customer lists. So whether it's on, say, your e-commerce or Shopify store, using pop-up forms to collect customer data, or asking people to, say, text into a dedicated number so that they can find out more information from you. Anything that you are, any tool that you have available to you to collect information from a customer, and then, but with taking that information from a customer, giving them something back in return, is actually how you can build up your customer lists, which will therefore allow you to market more in a more direct and personal way to your customers via whatever channel works best for you. That is via Instagram, via Facebook, via an email marketing campaign or an SMS campaign, or even in some cases, even old school direct marketing can work, you know, through the mail can work as well. Depends on your store. But if you are a traditional retail store, start with your original physical point of presence. It was a thing that worked for you originally. It can be the thing that helps you pivot.
The one thing I'd add to that as well, Rach, is understanding what customers have purchased previously. So you know, when Roger David was open, I was a big shopper at Roger David purely for their shirts. So if I was getting marketing about their shirts, that's something I'd look at. Whereas if it was about something else, I typically wouldn't open the email or SMS. So if you can get that level of understanding where that communication becomes quite personable to somebody, then that's really important.
that's lifting it up to the level that it starts becoming incredibly sophisticated. And once you're at that level, your customers will come back again and again and again. And it's a really valuable tool. We're actually out of questions and we're also out of time. So just to wrap this one up, I'd like to say thank you to everyone who's been on the call today. Really appreciate you spending the time with us, and really appreciate being able to share some of our knowledge with you. From a message media side, we have put together a COVID-specific resource hub that's available on our website. The support site is support.messagemedia.com. And when you're there, there's actually a large COVID category where you can see checklists, access to support material, and also a series of templates and things like that. Whether you're an existing message media customer or not, this tool is available to you if you just need a bit of a hint or a guiding light around what communications you may want to be taking. So thanks very much for joining us. Hope you stay safe. And we'll be following this webinar up with an email in the next couple of days. And we also have another few webinars in this webinar series. So jump onto our website if you want to find out more. Thank you very much.
Thanks all.
Thank you.